You see, no weapon formed against you can prosper. It's in the Word. And if you need help, all you gotta do is ask. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be open to you.
Welcome back to the Behavior Revolution, brothers and sisters, and we're starting something new today. Our brother Shodan in Mumbai is a very busy man. He's written lots and lots of articles, and he's got this amazing system to interpret scripture through all the shadows, pointing to Yahusha, proving that all the living word is all about Yahusha, all the Torah laws, all the patterns and systems. But as I said, he's pretty busy. I want to get some of these articles he's done that are just sitting in blog posts in various places. I want to get them out there because they're amazing information. So today, Therase and I are going to go through this one about the Sabbath, because as you know, Yahusha's been talking to us about the Sabbath, and Shodan's written all about it, and I think it's really important that you all know. So let's start going through it. Exodus 20 verse 8 says, "Remember the Sabbath day to set it apart. 6 days you labor and shall do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to your Elohim. You do not do any work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, female servant, cattle, stranger who is within your gates. For in 6 days Yahuah made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore Yahuah blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart." So I'm just going to read this in simple English wherever there's things that are complicated, just so this all flows and we can get through it. Because the patterns and the truths within it that Yahusha wants to talk to us about are amazing. He says, when we read the 10 Commandments, most of us take the commandments at face value, as writ. While Israel, after the flesh, stood in carnal ordinances, they never understood the spirit in the letter. They never understood the spirit within the words, within the letter. Yahusha revealed a fresh spiritual aspect to the commandments, making the commandment not burdensome, but at the same time, man became more accountable to the commandment, because only those with the circumcision in the heart, made without hands of men, could or can walk in obedience, seeing the goal and the fulfillment of Torah, who is Messiah. Speaking about the cleansing and purifying according to Moses' Torah, the disciple uses the words fleshly regulations. Fleshly regulations. We're talking about Paul here, who wrote all this. And notice it says that, where did it say it? Yahusha revealed a fresh spiritual aspect to the commandments, making the commandments not burdensome, but at the same time man became more accountable. By doing it through the Spirit, in the spiritual understanding, you actually become more accountable. Did you want to say something?
Well, where it says only those with circumcision in the heart, made without men, there's only one person who can do that for us, and that's Yahusha.
Yeah. It's the only one way that you can really do the commands. In Hebrews 9, Paul says, which was a parable for the present time, in which both gifts and slaughters are offered, which are unable to perfect the one serving as to his conscience. Only as to foods and drinks and different washings, ceremonial washings and immersions, fleshly regulations imposed until a time of setting matters straight. Yahusha's perspective of the 10 Commandments could be seen in when he brought forth the exposition of what the command stood for. In Exodus 20 it says, "You do not murder. A person who would not kill with a sword, would think he was not guilty, because he took the commandment literally and fleshly." So if you haven't killed somebody literally with a sword or shot them dead or something like that, you would think you're innocent of that commandment, wouldn't you? But see what Yahusha said about murder. You heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you, that whoever is wroth, enraged, angry with his brother, without a cause, shall be liable to judgment. And whoever says to his brother, Raka, that means like stupid fool, shall be liable to the Sanhedrin. But whoever says, you fool, shall be liable to the fire of Gehenna. In other words, destruction. If then you bring your gift to the altar, and there remains, if you bring your gift to the altar, and there you remember that your brother holds whatever against you, leave your gift there before the altar. Go make peace first with your brother, and then come offer your gift. See how Yahusha is bringing real meaning to that commandment? The disciple John said this about murder. We know that we have passed out of death into life because we love the brothers. The one not loving his brother stays in death. Everyone hating his brother or sister is a murderer. And you know that no murderer has everlasting life staying in him. By this we have known love, because he laid down his life for us. And we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers. But whoever has this world's good and sees his brother in need and shuts up his tender affections from him, how does the love of Elohim stay in him? My little children, let us not love in word or in tongue, but in deed and in truth. Behavior, yeah? When you see a brother or sister in Yahuah, and is in need of this world's goods and in financial trouble, if we don't help him, we are not displaying true love. And where there is no love, there is hate. There's no grey area. If it's not love, it's hate. So it says that, doesn't it? When you see a brother or sister in Yahusha, because Yahuah is not here anymore, in need of the world's goods and financial trouble, if we don't help them, it's not love, is it? It's hate. Hence we see more accountability from the commandment, which was to bring life, but brought death, because those observing it didn't have the work of Yahuah on their hearts, and also did not understand the commandment to be set apart with the Spirit concealed in the letter. The Spirit concealed in the letter. Another example is in Exodus 20. You do not commit adultery. What did Yahusha say? You heard that it was said of those of old, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone looking at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. And if your right eye causes you to stumble, pluck it out and throw it away from you. For it is better for you that one of your members perish than for your entire body to be thrown into Gehenna. Paul said he was alive apart from the Torah once. Not that he was alive to the things of Elohim, but to his fleshly pleasing by obeying the Torah. But when the command came which was supposed to bring the life, he realized that it brought him death, as he understood that the Torah was spiritual, but he was fleshly and sold under sin. Well, Paul was out there killing the people that were being immersed and in Yahusha, wasn't he? So, yeah. And yet he was obeying the Torah apparently. So you see the difference? Paul says, I was alive apart from the Torah once, but when the command came, the sin revived and I died. And the command which was to result in life, this I found to result in death. His instructions were to give us life, but most people are living in the death, the Torah of sin and death. For sin, having taken the occasion through the command, deceived me, and through it killed me. So that the Torah truly is set apart, and the command set apart, and righteous and good. Therefore that which is good becomes death to me. Let it not be. Therefore has that which is good become death to me? Let it not be. But the sin, that sin might be manifest, was working death in me through what is good, so that sin through the command might become an exceedingly great sinner. For we know that the Torah is spiritual, but I am fleshly, sold under sin. For what I work, I know not. For what I wish, I do not practice. But what I hate, that I do. But if I do what I do not wish, I agree with the Torah that is in good. And now it is no longer I that work it, but the sin dwelling in me. So you can see Paul's wrestling with his flesh, trying to overcome everything. Can't overcome. He's wrestling with himself. And he realized that only Messiah could save him, because now he is delighted to obey the Torah of Elohim, according to the inward man, but his flesh brings him to captivity to the law of sin, which is in his flesh. Romans 7, for I delight in the Torah of Elohim, according to the inward man. But I see another law in my members, battling against the Torah of my mind, and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin, which is in my members. Wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from this body of death? Thanks to Elohim, through Yahusha Messiah our Master. So then with the mind I truly myself serve the Torah of Elohim, but with the flesh the law of sin. I can give examples of the other commandments, but a twofold witness is sufficient to show that Yahuwah's Torah is spiritual. The spirit within the word, remember? So let's now see Sabbath from a day perspective and the spiritual perspective. We will look also in a bit about the historical facts of Yisrael when they were in captivity on foreign soil. Today, also people turning to call on the name of Yahuah are very rigid with Moses' literal code observance on foreign soil, whereas Abraham looked to the heavenly country in which righteousness dwells. Let's have a look. Hebrews 11. By belief, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he was about to receive as an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. By belief, he sojourned in the land of promise as a stranger, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking for the city having foundations, whose builder and maker was Elohim. So even Abraham was searching for this supernatural being all the time, especially after he'd met Melchizedek. Now there are people who say that Abraham was living before Torah came. But what they fail to see is that he knew that the land he was sojourning was the promised land to his seed, but lived in it as a stranger because he was looking for the city having foundations, whose builder and maker is Elohim. Moreover, Paul says in the same chapter, about all the fathers who believed in the promise of Elohim lived in the same manner. Genesis 17, and I shall give to you and your seed after you the land of your sojournings, all the land of Canaan as an everlasting possession, and I shall be their Elohim. Hebrews 11, in belief all these died, not having received the promises, but seeing them from a distance, welcomed and embraced them, and confessed that they were aliens and strangers on the earth. For those who speak this way make it clear that they seek a fatherland. And yet, if they had indeed kept remembering that place from which they had come out, they would have had the chance to return. From which they had come out, they would have had the chance to return. But now they long for a better place, that is, a heavenly. They long for a better place, a heavenly. Therefore, Elohim is not ashamed to be called their Elohim, for he has prepared a city for them. So he says, if the fathers who did not receive the promise looked for the heavenly country, in other words, the new Jerusalem, then the Sabbath is more than a day, because there remains a promise of Sabbath rest for the people of Yahuah, of Elohim. Get it? We're looking for the day that's coming, the rest experience that we can enter into fully. Hebrews 4, if Joshua had given them rest, he would not have spoken of another day after that. So there remains a Sabbath keeping for the people of Elohim. The 10 Commandments says to honor the Sabbath and keep it set apart. 6 days you work, but the 7th day Yahuwah rested. Did Yahuwah really rest? Didn't Yahusha say he and his father have been working all along? That's a good point.
Yeah.
Did Yahuwah really rest? Didn't Yahusha say he and his father have been working all along? Hence the outward code stood in a spiritual honoring, looking to the new Jerusalem coming out of the 6, as the entire creation was made in 6 days, and man is occupied in the carnal fleshly cycle being incomplete in the number 6. That makes sense? Did Yahuwah really rest? Didn't Yahusha say he and his Father have been working all along? Hence the outward code stood in a spiritual honoring, supernatural, looking to the new Jerusalem, the new city that's coming out of the 6 days, 6,000 years, as the entire creation was made in 6 days, and man is occupied in the carnal fleshly cycle, being incomplete in the number 6. It's not finished, it needs one more to complete the cycle of 7. John 5 says, and because of this, the Jews persecuted Yahusha and were seeking to kill him, because he was doing these healings on the Sabbath. But Yahusha answered him, my Father works until now, and I work. My Father's working and I'm working. Keep in mind there's a Father-Son image going on here. There's not two beings. Matthew 12, at that time Yahusha went through the grain fields on the Sabbath, and his taught ones, we know the story, his taught ones were hungry, began to pluck the heads of grain. When the Pharisees saw it, they said, look, your taught ones are doing what is not right to do on the Sabbath. But he said to them, you have not read what David did when he was hungry, he and those who were with him, how he went into the house of Elohim and ate the showbread, which was not right for him to eat, nor those who were with him, but only the priests. Or did you not read in the Torah that on this Sabbath the priests in the set-apart place actually profane the Sabbath and are blameless? Yet they're blameless because they're serving the tabernacle. They're not resting, are they? No. But I say to you that in this place there is one greater than the set-apart place. Who would that be? And if you had known what this means, I desire compassion and not offering, you would have condemned the blameless. You would not have condemned the blameless. Him and his disciples are blameless. If you'd known what it means that I desire compassion, not offering, you would not be condemning the blameless. For the son of Adam, son of man, son of Adam, is master of the Sabbath. So.
What about that?
Yeah. He's putting it right up them, isn't he?
Yep. Just showing them, well, what you're doing is actually wrong. Not what they're doing. They're just feeding themselves. They're not working as such.
No.
So they're having compassion, showing others compassion at the same time, and then the Pharisees are just like, no, that's wrong. That's it. That's against what the letter of the law says.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Amazing, isn't it? Looking at the showbread, Exodus 29, and Aaron and his sons shall eat the flesh of the ram and the bread that is in the basket by the door of the tent of meeting. And they shall eat those offerings with which the atonement was made, to ordain them, to set them apart. But let a stranger not eat them, because they are set apart. So Torah shows compassion. David and his companions were hungry when they were fleeing King Saul, and he approached Ahimelech the priest, who gave them the showbread to eat, as he did not have common bread. And yet Yahuah didn't strike the priest or David and his companions, did they? Because Yahuah ordained it. Yahuah can do that. Yeah. Yahusha works in supernatural ways, isn't he? Through the spirit of his Torah. Matthew 12, Yahusha said the priests profaned the Sabbath. How did they profane the Sabbath? How were the priests profaning the Sabbath? Remember up there when it said, Yahusha said the priests were profaning the Sabbath? John 7, because of this Moses has given you the circumcision, though it is not from Moses, but from the fathers. And you circumcise a man on the Sabbath, don't you? If a man can receive circumcision on the Sabbath so that the Torah of Moses should not be broken, according to them, are you angry with me because I made a man entirely well on the Sabbath? Do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. The Torah clearly states that the male child should be circumcised on the 8th day, because his mother would be unclean for 7 days, as in her monthly separation. But they changed the day of circumcision to Sabbath instead of the 8th day of the mother's purification, thus profaning the Sabbath. They've even changed their own Torah laws to suit themselves.
Isn't that disgusting? They've been given the instruction, and then, oh no, we'll do it when we want.
Yeah.
So they're basically saying, well, we don't care about what you've told us.
Yeah.
We only care about the way we want to do it.
Exactly right. Leviticus 12, speak to the children of Israel, saying, when a woman has conceived and has given birth to a male child, then she shall be unclean 7 days, as in the days of her monthly separation she is unclean. So on the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin is circumcised. While the majority took their male sons to be circumcised on the Sabbath, irrespective of the 8 days counting of its mother's purification, the true Jews obeyed the Torah in observing the circumcision to be done on the 8th day of the mother's purification and not on Sabbath. Even before the Torah was given, Yahuah told Abraham that he and his seed needs to guard his covenant that he is making with him. Needs to guard his covenant. We all know a covenant is really just a simple way of saying, do what I say and live. Don't do what I say and die. Abraham had to guard it. Genesis 17. Elohim said to Abraham, as for you, guard my covenant, you and your seed after you throughout their generations. There was no covenant written down on stone though, was there? No books or laws written, so what was he supposed to obey? Clearly, Abraham was given instructions that have been passed down from generations. The word, the way, the behavior, what's right and wrong, Torah, if you will, had obviously been known for the first 2,000 years. Otherwise, how could they be disobedient if they didn't know what it was, even though it wasn't carved in stone? You know, guard my covenant, you and your seed after you through your generations. This is my covenant which you guard between me and you and your seed after you. Every male child among you is to be circumcised. And you shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall become a sign of the covenant between me and you. And a son of 8 days is circumcised by you, every male child in your generation, he who is born in your house or bought with silver from any foreigner who is not of your seed. So, John the Immerser and Yahusha were circumcised on the 8th day of his mother's purification. Luke 1. And it came to be on the 8th day that they came to circumcise the child. So he's proving it here. They were called him by his father Zechariah. When the 8 days were completed for him to be circumcised, his name was called Yahusha, the name given by the messenger or the angel before he was conceived in the womb. So he's just backing up his statements here with the scriptures. You can see it. The tradition of circumcision on Sabbath came from the fathers who never understood the Torah of Elohim. In John 7, Yahusha says that Moses gave them the circumcision, but it was not Moses, but the fathers that you circumcise a man. It was not Moses, but the fathers that you circumcise a man on Sabbath, because Moses' Torah clearly says that the child should be circumcised on the 8th day, and not wait until Sabbath to be circumcised. But they never left an opportunity to accuse Yahusha for healing on the Sabbath, did they? Or his disciples eating corn in the cornfields on Sabbath. We can relate to this today, the hypocrisy.
Absolutely.
Yahusha goes on to say the son of Adam, the son of man, is the master of the Sabbath. He upheld the Torah in letting them know that he upheld the Torah in letting them know that the Torah is spiritual, supernatural, not fleshly. The tokens pointed to the spiritual and can be seen in the book of Genesis itself.
Well, the thing is, people can't see that if they don't have the right spirit.
No, they can't.
So all of the stuff that we're getting from Yahusha, through Shodan, through yourself, through Chris, through Victoria, is just showing that we have the correct spirit, and those who are coming against it don't.
Yeah.
They're still trying to follow the laws Moses was given, and not the laws that Yahusha is saying that they should be doing.
Because he summarized them too, didn't he?
Yeah.
So fascinating to go into all the patterns, isn't it? And all the scriptures and the text. Psalm 65 says, they who dwell in the ends of the earth are afraid of your signs. You make the morning and the evening shout for joy. Well, the word for signs is H226 Aleph Tau, which points to the spiritual. And we see H4480, a man, which means kind of or species, before the token which categorizes the observers of the command as fleshly and spiritual. So Genesis 1, and Elohim said, Let lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night. Let them be for signs and for appointed times and for days and for years. So there's that word there, signs. Let them be for signs. We also see the pattern in Genesis 1 when Yahuah made everything. It's stated, and in the evening and the morning were the first day, and the evening and the morning were the second day. Genesis 1:5. And Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day, and the evening and the morning were the first day. We also see that the spiritual was hidden in the natural, as stated in Genesis 2. These are the births of the heavens and the earth when they were created, in the day that Yahuah Elohim made earth and heavens. Man was created on the sixth day. Genesis 1, and Elohim created the man in his image. In the image of Elohim he created him, male and female he created them. And Elohim blessed them. Elohim said to them, bear fruit and increase, fill the earth, subdue it, rule over the fish of the sea, birds of the heavens, creatures moving on the earth. Elohim said, see that I have given you every plant that yields seed which is on the face of the earth. Every tree whose fruit yields seed to you is for food. To every beast of the earth, every bird of the heavens, every creeping creature on the earth in which there is life, every green plant is for food. And it came to be so. And Elohim saw all that he had made, and see, it was very good. And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, the sixth day. So when we read Psalm 65, we read the continuity. We read the continuity into a complete cycle of evening to evening, when the sons of Elohim shouted for joy, being complete in the day of Yahuah entering the rest. They who dwell in the ends of the earth are afraid of your signs. You make the morning and the evening shout for joy. Known to Elohim are all his works from the beginning of the world. And Yahuah says to Job, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if you have understanding. Where were you? He's comparing. Who set its measurements, if you know? Or who stretched the line upon it? Upon what were its foundations sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of Elohim shouted for joy. So he's speaking about the creation here. From a spiritual understanding, the cornerstone is Yahusha. Must be Yahusha. He's the Aleph Tor from the beginning. Yeah. As all are measured into him, the living dwelling, the dwelling place, temple. So from a spiritual understanding, the cornerstone is Yahusha, as all are measured into him, the temple of Yahuah, as we are all built upon him into a spiritual house, and the morning stars are the elect who prophetically, in Yahuah's rest, shouted for joy. Here Yahuah speaks as though this has already happened, but it's speaking of the new heavens and the new earth, because these heavens and earth are going to be destroyed by fire. Interesting. Looking at the scripture like this, looking to the new heaven and earth, looking to the city whose foundations and builder is Elohim, Yahusha, looking to the future, the supernatural. Ephesians 2, having been built upon the foundation of the disciples and prophets, Yahusha Messiah himself being chief cornerstone, in whom all the building being joined together grows into a set apart dwelling place in Yahusha, in whom you also are being built together into a dwelling of Elohim in the Spirit. So you can see the plan. We are going to be fitted together and become this new city. Therefore, says the Master Yahuah, see, I am laying in Zion a stone for a foundation, a tried stone, precious cornerstone, a settled foundation. He who trusts shall not hasten away, and I shall make right ruling the measuring line, and righteousness the plummet, and the hail shall sweep away the refuge of lying, and the waters overflow the hiding place. See how much scripture he uses to prove his point? Yeah. To show how it's all interconnected. old creation plan, the new creation plan.
You can see that that's what the plan was all along.
Because he knew. He wasn't surprised when Adam sinned, was he?
No.
He knows everything. So, Romans 4, as it has been written, I have made you a father of many nations, in the presence of him who he believed, even Elohim, who gives the life to the dead and calls that which does not exist as existing. He even calls, he gives life to the dead and even calls that which does not exist as existing. Doesn't exist yet, but he says it is.
Well, the light didn't exist until he said it did.
Exactly.
Dark didn't exist until he said it did. Man. Until he created and said it did.
So he's declaring this new realm, reign, city that's coming as though it's here, as though it's existing. Because it is, it's a seed. Romans 4, who against all expectation did believe in expectation, so that he should become father of many nations, according to what was said, so shall your seed be. Well, that's what belief is, isn't it? Believing in something you can't see. Abraham was the father of our belief. The promised seed was Messiah, and all those who believe in Messiah Yahusha. So coming back to Psalm 65, his elect are the only ones who understand and fear his signs, his tokens, because they point to the spiritual fulfillment in Messiah, and shout for joy when they enter the 1,000 years. Get it? That's what that psalm was speaking about. Not the literal day of rest, speaking about the rest that's coming. They're shouting for joy when they see this new city, the fullness of all creation. Beloved ones, 2 Peter 3:8. Beloved ones, let not this one matter be hidden from you, that with Yahuah, 1 day is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day. Not even one of our fathers ever lived 1,000 years, and they all fell short. The longest one to live was Methuselah, who lived 969 years. Genesis 5, and all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. Man fell short of the 1 day, but in Psalm 65 we see the complete day from an evening to evening, as we enjoin, as in Genesis 1, when man was created on, as we enjoin the 6th day to the 7th day. And this is the day of Yahuah, when he comes in the fierceness of his wrath to visit the transgressions of the wicked, in cutting them off from the life into the second death. But his elect enter into the 1,000 years, the immortality in Messiah. So even Abraham could see the day that Yahusha was going to return. It's Yahusha returning. The prophets call it the day of Yahuah, but it's Yahusha who's coming back. Because we know what happened to Yahuah, what he did. Looking to the 1,000 years, the immortality, looking to the immortality. Hence we must read Genesis 2, rest in the light of the works being finished from the foundation of the world. And we read in Genesis 2 that the heavens and the earth were created on the day that Yahuah Elohim made the earth and the heavens. And that's just proving it there, all the scriptures about creation. He created it, Elohim completed his work on the 7th day. Elohim blessed the 7th day, set it apart. On it he rested from all his work which Elohim created had made. These are the births of the heaven and the earth in the day that Yahuah Elohim made the heavens and the earth. Paul says in Hebrews 4, therefore, since a promise remains of entering into his rest, let us fear lest any of you seem to have come short of it. For indeed the good news was brought to us as well as to them, but the word which they heard did not profit them. That's the Israelites, the wilderness, not having mixed with belief in those who heard it. For we who have believed do enter into that rest, as he has said, as I swore in my wrath, if they shall enter into my rest. And yet his works were finished from the foundation of the world. For somewhere he has said this about the 7th day, Elohim rested on the 7th day from all his works. And in this again, if they shall enter into my rest. Paul understood this, didn't he? Since then it remains for some to enter into it. And those who formerly received the good news did not enter in because of disobedience. 4. If Joshua had given them rest, he would not have given or spoken of another day after that. So there remains a Sabbath keeping for the people of Elohim. The promise is yet to be fulfilled. So if the sons, okay, we're going back to Exodus here. So if the sons of Yisrael kept, Exodus 31. So the sons of Yisrael shall keep the 𝗪𝗓 Sabbath, to celebrate the 𝗪𝗓 Sabbath. That's what he's talking about. Celebrate the Sabbath throughout their generations as a perpetual covenant. He's talking about the 7-day cycle. Exodus 31. It is the sign, Hebrew word oath, between me and the sons of Yisrael forever. For in 6 days Yahuah made the heavens and the earth, but on the 7th day he ceased and was refreshed.
Well, if you look at it, he created everything, and it says on the 7th day he rested. Then what happened? Adam and Eve sinned.
Yeah.
So that 7th day rest was basically broken, because how could he rest when he had to fix everything again?
Exactly.
So
they broke it.
So therefore, he hasn't rested and won't rest until he comes.
Exactly right. So in Exodus 31, it is the 𝗪𝗓, so it's speaking about the sign. It is a sign between me and the sons of Yisrael forever. So that's what he's saying up here. The Sabbath, to celebrate the sign Sabbath throughout the generations as a perpetual, everlasting covenant. Sabbath was a sign. It is a sign between me and the sons of Yisrael forever. For in 6 days Yahuah made heavens and the earth. On the 7th day he ceased and was refreshed. The sign is a connector to the previous sign used in the verse before Sabbath, and shows that the physical sign was pointing to the spiritual rest that we would enter when the Messiah would come. Pointing to the spiritual rest that we would enter when the Messiah would come.
How amazing is that?
I mean, there's a huge rest that Messiah, Yahusha, unleashed when he came the first time. He allowed us to be delivered through his blood and the spirit that can come within us as a seed. But what kind of deliverance will there be in final culmination and consummation when he comes the second time? Finished. James, the apostle or disciple, speaks of the raising up of the tabernacle of David, which was fallen down, and speaks of Gentiles coming into the belief upon whom his name is called. And then goes on to say, known unto Elohim are all his works from the beginning of the world. Interesting. Acts 15, known unto Elohim are all his works from the beginning of the world. This all ties up so beautifully. We see the nail in the name of David. That's the Daleth. We're talking about Hebrew characters here, symbols. Doorway nailed to the doorway. Heaven's doorway nailed to the earthly doorway, and only those having spiritual eyes can see Messiah standing, securing and surrounding the house. So we're looking at the images of the Hebrew letters and what people think they mean. So Hebrews 8, a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle, which the master pitched, not man. Let's see the breakup of the word Sabbath or Shabbat. The vowel points added to the words by Masoretes make the same words sound differently and mean differently, but the letters used are the same. Hence, there are many variations to the same word. We've seen that. Sabbath, Shabbat, Shab-bath. Everybody's got a different take on it, but what he's saying is the Hebrew symbols basically mean the same thing. First bit is Shab, means to return or turn back. The first letter is the Sheen, picture of the teeth, meaning to press. It's the same sh sound that's in Yahusha, the Sheen. The second letter, the Beit, B, is the picture of the tent or house. Combined, these two letters form the word Shab, representing a pressing to the tent and means to return. So, I mean, the pure language that's spoken in the beginning of time on the whole earth was Hebrew. So if we want to understand what something means, we should go back to the original and search it out. And Not speak it as a second language though, because that's ridiculous. But if you want to know something, look it up in the Hebrew. So that's what he's done. So it's speak even the first part of the word in Shab-bath, Sabbath, Shab represents a pressing to the tent and means to return. Return to what? Hence, Shabbat means pressing into. Press into the house of covenant. Press into the covenant house. Beth, house, covenant means daughter. And Abraham took Nahor, and Abraham and Nahor took them wives. The name of Abraham's wife was Sarah, the name of Nahor's wife, Milcah, the daughter, Bath. Same word here, see? Talking about Shab-bath. Shab, return to the covenant house. Bath means daughter. Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and the father of Ishkar. Shab-bath put together is return, O daughter. Return, O daughter. That's interesting, isn't it? Bath, bet, house, tower, covenant also is a Hebrew measure. Also is a Hebrew measure. 1 Kings 7, and it was a hand breadth thick, and the brim thereof was wrought like the brim of a cup with flowers of lilies. It contained 2,000 baths. So he's proving where these scriptures are. Ezekiel 45, the ephah and the bath shall be of one measure, that the bath may contain the 10th part of an homer, and the ephah the 10th part of a homer. The measure thereof shall be after the homer. Bath is equal to ephah, which was used in the sin offering. The context of Ezekiel is to have a just ephah and a just bath in measuring justice. Hence, Shabbat means Sabbath. Hence, Sabbath means returned measure. It is what Yahuah gives us as a just measure to save us in Yahusha, and what we give in return to him in obeying him. Just making sense? It is what is what Yahuah, it's what Elohim gives us as a just measure to save us, deliverance in Yahusha, and how we respond in obeying him. The verb shab is also rooted in the Hebrew root shabay, which means to swear. Shab means daughter, hence the words Shab-bath, 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 from where the word Shabbat is rooted. Put together means oath of a daughter. The reverse of Shab-bath is Bathsheba. Bathsheba, what's that remind you of? Bathsheba. The name Bathsheba means daughter of oath. Solomon was the son of Bathsheba, and being in the covenant, he prophesied of the love of Elohim towards the daughter of Zion as her husband and maker, and the love of Zion to her husband and maker in a marriage oath. And Solomon wrote all those love songs, romantic love poems, the Song of Solomon. My beloved is mine and I am his, he feedeth among the lilies. Isaiah 54, for thy maker is thy husband. Yahuah of hosts is his name, and thy redeemer of the set apart one of Yisrael. The Elohim of the whole earth shall be, Elohim of the whole earth shall he be called. Elohim of the whole earth. Yahusha is our husband, and we are of his flesh and of his bones. So look for these little summaries. If you don't understand every word that's going on in a lot of the Hebrew explanations, you look for his summaries as well, because he pulls it together in each section. Yahusha is our husband, and we are of his flesh and of his bones. The same word Shabbat also means 7. Here we go. Bath also means measure. Hence put together 7 measures, which is a complete measure. Well, Shabbat is number 7, isn't it? 7 day rest. Colossians 2. We're looking at Sabbath now in the New Testament. Colossians 2. Let no one therefore judge you in food or drink, or in respect of a festival, or of new months, or Sabbaths, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of the Messiah. Other translations say, which are a shadow of things to come for the body of Messiah. Either way, there's still a shadow of things to come, aren't they?
Yeah.
whether they're but the bodies of the Messiah or for the body of Messiah. It's still a shadow of things to come, isn't it? Paul is not saying that let no one therefore judge you for not eating food or observing feasts of Yahuah or Shabbath, which are a shadow of things to come. But Paul is saying, let no one therefore judge you when you eat food or observing feasts or of Yahuah or Sabbath, which are a shadow of things to come. The churches take the former interpretation, whereas the latter is true, because Paul goes on to say, but the body is of the Messiah. See what it's saying here? Paul is not saying that let no one therefore judge you for not eating. He's saying don't let people judge you if you are. The Pharisees accused Yahusha for not observing the Sabbath because they had a different carnal meaning, carnal, earthly, base, fleshly meaning to Sabbath, and did not see the compassion of the Saviour in redeeming his creation from vanity, ego, lusts of the flesh. They only observed a literal day because it was commanded. They only observed a literal day because it was commanded. They did not understand the spiritual in the natural. They did not understand the spiritual in the natural. Matthew 12, but if you had known what this means, I desire compassion and not sacrifice, you would have not condemned the innocent. So how can you have compassion if you don't have his spirit? How can you do the two commandments, the greatest two, the new, Yahusha's two new commandments, love Elohim and love your neighbor as yourself? How can you have compassion if you don't have his supernatural experience, his spirit within you? So there's all these people marching around having been immersed in the name of Yahusha. Do you see compassion?
No.
Or do you see the letter, the writ, the sacrifice, the commandments? That's for you to decide. Matthew 12, for the Son of Man is also master of the Sabbath. The body is of Messiah. The body is of Messiah. Can be seen where Yahusha says of himself, the body is of Messiah. He's talking about what Paul said up here. Let no one judge you in food or drink, which are all a shadow of things to come. Sabbaths, which are all a shadow of things to come. But, or for, either way, the body is of the Messiah. So, the body is of Messiah can be seen where Yahusha says of himself that he is greater than the physical temple of the Jews, because he understood perfectly what Sabbath meant and observed it perfectly, and quoted Hosea 6:6, which says, for I desire in mercy and not sacrifice, and in the knowledge of Elohim rather than burnt offerings. That was the amazing thing I went through when I was going through the Gospels, translating them and whatnot. You realize majority of the words Yahusha said were quoting older prophets and Torah. So, but he, of course, it wasn't writ in him, it was alive in him. It was the spirit coming from him. The knowledge of Elohim, spiritual, in the physical. So the knowledge of Elohim spiritually, supernaturally, in the physical, like the burnt offerings and Sabbath, is what the desire of Elohim was. The body of Messiah is the observation of the Torah. In seeing that we are now his body, and the sanctification or setting apart of the body is what Torah teaches. Setting apart of the body is what Torah teaches. That's what he wants, for us to be set apart.
Well, if you think about what that says, that's basically saying those who are overcoming will be set apart.
Yeah. Good, isn't it?
Plain and simple, isn't it?
Absolutely.
When you read that.
Hebrews 10, by a new and living way which he consecrated for us through the veil, that is to say, his flesh. We need to go into the spirit, beyond the flesh, to see the spiritual fulfillment of the promise of the Sabbath rest, which stood in a day observance, signifying the day of Yahusha, which is the sign, which is the Sabbath. Yeah? Got that? You need to go into the spirit, beyond the flesh, go beyond the fleshly command, instruction, to see the spiritual fulfillment of the promise of the Sabbath rest, which stood in a day observance, signifying the day of Yahusha, which is the Sabbath, which is the final seventh day, Sabbath, eternal millennial rest. The New Testament assemblies met on the first of the Sabbaths. This article's 2 years old. Shodan's changed a few of his terms since then. The New Testament assemblies met on the first of the Sabbaths. We must understand facts. We must understand facts from Acts of the Apostles' Scroll. It was a transition time from being a carnal Jew to being a spiritual Jew, and hence a doctrine. That's if you were a Jew. A transition from being a carnal Jew to a spiritual Jew, and hence a doctrine cannot be established based on the acts of men of Yahuah who acted in a certain way. For example, Paul purified himself and shaved his hair in an oath to show that he kept the outward form of Torah, carnal observances, so that he doesn't become a stumbling block to the believing Jews. You got this? They were brought up as Jews in a Jewish culture, and they were incorporating what Yahusha did, the living word, the supernatural experience, particularly after the day of Pentecost. They were incorporating that into their existing lifestyles. Isn't that what we all have to do?
Yeah.
So Paul was a Jew. He went and made vows and did things and Sabbaths and feasts and shaved his head when it was the right time to do it. Does that mean we have to do that today?
No.
It was custom. And so what Shodan's saying here is you cannot form a doctrine based on the acts of men who acted a certain way in the book of Acts, because it's a transition time. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, they didn't know. They knew the old stuff, and they were coming into the new stuff. So Yahusha was showing them the way slowly. And let's face it, he's showing us the way slowly. He reveals what he can when he knows that we are ready to see it.
Yeah.
If we're not ready to see it, he won't reveal it.
Yeah. And the whole book of Acts is documenting it. So people are taking the documentation of it and forming doctrines about it, when they're all just reeling from their supernatural experience, trying to work out what to make of it. Acts 21, when we had arrived in Jerusalem, the brothers received us gladly, and on the following day, Paul went with us to James, and all the elders came. And having greeted them, he was relating one by one what Elohim had done among the Gentiles through his service. When they heard it, they praised the master, and they said to him, "You, see, brother, how many thousands of Jews there are who have believed, and all are ardent, passionate for the Torah. And they have been informed about you, that you teach all the Jews who are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, saying not to circumcise the children, nor walk according to the practices. What then is it? They shall certainly hear that you have come. So do this, what we say to you. We have 4 men who have taken a vow. Take them and be cleansed with them." What they're saying is there's a big upheaval, because Paul was speaking to a lot of Gentiles, and as we've discussed, saying to them, you don't have to worry about this bit and this bit and this bit and this bit, but that's all Jewish custom. You don't have to worry about all that stuff, circumcision, Sabbath, all that stuff. You don't have to worry about that. So when he comes back to Jerusalem, the other apostles, the disciples are like, people are pretty upset about you because you're not keeping the Jewish festival customs. So you better go and shave your head and do this vow with those other 4 guys over there, just to calm everybody down, so that you're not a stumbling block. That's what he's saying here.
Yeah.
We see in verse 20, for the sake of the Jews who believed in Messiah. He did it for the sake of the Jews who believed in Messiah. So they didn't want to upset them. But were still zealous for the Torah. They were still zealous for the Torah. They were misinformed that Paul taught against Moses' Torah, whereas Paul taught about Messiah being the fulfillment, the goal of the Torah. And he taught the spirit in the letter in Moses' Torah, the spirit within the letter, the voice within the word of Moses' Torah. So it's not unlike what's coming at us. You're being Torah-less. You're teaching people to not do the feasts and not do the Sabbath and not this, that. No, it's the spirit within the message, the supernatural truth, the overcoming, as you said.
Yeah.
In our study, beloved, we saw how the early Jews met in synagogues, where they assembled, and many of these synagogues with their rulers turned to Yahusha. Paul was reasoning in the synagogues every Sabbath and won over both Jews and Gentiles. And some of these entire synagogues turned with their ruler to Messiah. And we have 2 names listed of the rulers who had turned to Messiah. And he was reasoning in the synagogues every Sabbath and won over by Jews and Greeks. He won over Jews and Greeks. And Crispus, the ruler of the synagogue, did believe in the master with all his household. Many of the Corinthians, hearing, believed and were immersed. He got a ruler of the synagogue to believe in Yahusha and transform over. So therefore, because of this one ruler, how many more people would be affected? So see how Paul was all things to all people? If he had to shave his head, even though it meant nothing to him, fine, shave your head. If you be all things to all people, wherever Yahusha sends you, just be as they are to try and win them over. Crispus is the Greek name, and he was a ruler of the Jewish synagogue, which shows he was a Jew in the dispersion, which means he was living outside of Jerusalem. And he came back to the fold of Yisrael, having believed in Yahusha, Messiah. Acts 18, all the Greeks took hold of Sosthenes, the leader of the synagogue, and beat him in front of the judgment seat. But Gallio was not concerned about any of these things. Paul mentions the same Sosthenes where the assembly of Corinth met every Sabbath. 1 Corinthians 1, Paul called a disciple of Yahushua Messiah by the desire of Elohim and brothers, Sosthenes. To the assembly of Elohim, which is at Corinth, to those who are in the set-apart Messiah, Yahusha, called set-apart ones with those calling on the name of Yahushua Messiah, our Master in every place, theirs and ours. Favour to you and peace from Elohim our Father, the Master Yahushua Messiah. Paul also mentions of immersing Crispus, which again shows that the people met on Sabbath in the synagogue where Crispus was the ruler. He says in 1 Corinthians 1, I thank Elohim that I immersed not one of you except Crispus and Gallio. Gallio must have also been a ruler of the synagogue at Corinth, and Paul is showing that he immersed, showing that he immersed no one else except the rulers of the synagogues who believed in Messiah. That's where they met to break bread on one of those Sabbaths. The same situation was in the land of Yisrael, as many rulers believed in Messiah. So the same situation was in the land of Yisrael, as many rulers believed in Messiah, but they feared the Pharisees and did not openly confess Messiah, lest they be put out of the synagogues. And the synagogues, well, that was a big cultural, social movement as well. So they were afraid.
Well, you can see what the Pharisees were doing to the people. They were oppressing them, weren't they? They were being like Pharaoh. Yeah. Basically.
Yeah.
Keeping them down, saying that's not what you do what we say.
Yeah. So. Teachers, preachers, pastors, rabbis. Yeah.
So all of those people were just basically keeping the people in bondage.
That's right. It was a custom of the Jews to assemble in synagogues for reading of Torah, because unlike today, they didn't have their own copy of the scriptures. So if the Torah is the life and the scripture is their life, they don't want to be cast out of the synagogue. They wouldn't be able to hear it or read it. So see the power these men had over them, religious men had over them. Yeah. Luke 4, and he, Yahusha, came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And according to his custom, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up to read. Luke 4, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him. Isaiah? I think it's, Isaiah. And having unrolled the scroll, he found the place where it was written, the Spirit of Yahuah is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring the good news to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to send away crushed ones with release, to proclaim the acceptable year of Yahuah, of Elohim. And having rolled up the scroll, he gave it back to the attendant and sat down. And the eyes of all in the congregation were fixed upon him, because he only read half the scripture. And They were in Capernaum, and immediately on the Sabbath he went into the congregation and taught. Oh no, sorry, I missed one. So their eyes were fixed on him, and he began to say to them, "Today this scripture has been filled in your hearing." So he only read half the text, and then he said, "Today this scripture has been filled in your hearing." Fulfilled. In other words, I'm the one. I'm the one this speaks about. This messenger, this deliverer. It's happening right among you. And they went into Capernaum, and immediately on the Sabbath he went into the congregation and taught. And having put out from Paphos, Paul and those with him came to Perge in Pamphylia, and John, having left them, returned to Jerusalem. But passing through from Perge, they came to Antioch and Pisidia, and went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and sat down. He's proving that they went to the Sabbath day. He's proving that they went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day. And why? And after the reading of the Torah and the prophets, the rulers of the synagogue said to them, saying, "Men, brothers, if you have any word of encouragement for the people, speak." This was the custom of the Jews and the Greeks, to gather in synagogues on Sabbath. And many of the synagogues with the rulers turned to Messiah, where they met to break bread. Acts 17, and having passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where there was a synagogue of the Jews. Synagogue of the Jews. And according to this custom, Saul went in to them, and according to his custom, Saul went in unto them, and for 3 Sabbaths was reasoning with them from the scriptures, explaining and pointing out that the Messiah had to suffer and rise again from the dead, saying, "This is the Messiah Yahusha, whom I proclaim to you." Constantly trying to take all the older scriptures and prove to them that it's Messiah Yahusha who's fulfilled all this. Most of them wouldn't have it. "I came to my own, and my own would not have me." On one of the Sabbaths, when the disciples were gathered together to break bread, Paul preached to them, intending to leave the following day, and he prolonged his message until midnight. And on the day of the Sabbath, he went outside the gate to a riverside, where we were supposing that there would be a place of prayer. And we sat down and spoke to the woman who had assembled. Synagogue is a Greek term, and in Hebrew it's called that, which means house of assembly, or Beit Tefillah, which means house of prayer. The message was to the messenger of the assembly in Philadelphia, which was a faithful assembly, showing this assembly had turned completely to Messiah. In the message to this assembly, Messiah mentions he would give up those of the synagogue of Satan and who say they are Jews but they're not, and are lying, to come and worship in their assembly, to show them that I love you. So, and that's written in Revelation 3, to the messenger of the assembly of Philadelphia, he who is set apart and true, he who has the key of David, who opens and no one shuts, and shuts and no one opens, says this, "I know your works. See, I've set before you an open door, and no one is able to shut it, that you have little power. You have little power, yet you've guarded my word, and have not denied my name. So see, I'm giving up those of the synagogue of Satan, who say they are Jews, but are not. They lie. See, I'm making them come and worship before your feet, and to know that I have loved you. Know that I love you. I have loved you. Because you have guarded my word of endurance, I shall also guard you from the hour of trial, which shall come upon all the world, to try those who dwell on the earth. See, I'm coming speedily. Hold what you have, that no one takes your crown. Talking about the crown a lot lately, haven't we? Hold what you have, that no one takes your crown. If you can understand this message about the Sabbath, hold on to it. As Christopher said last night, it's releasing. It's a doorway to release us into Yahusha's freedom, to come into his supernatural experience more and more. This shows that this assembly was a synagogue who had turned to Messiah completely. And Messiah speaks of leading the carnal Jews in the synagogue of Satan, in other words, those who don't know him, to come to this assembly. How important is it to come into an assembly? He speaks to the assemblies. His spirit, his power is being made known among his assemblies. Makes himself known to them. So, where are we? Are we nearly at the end? It's a long one, isn't it?
It is.
Yahusha rose on Sabbath to fulfill the rest of the seventh day. People say he rose on the Sunday because it was the morning. No, it was early hours of the end of the Sabbath, because Sabbath technically begins at sunset. So Yahusha rose on the Sabbath to fulfill the rest of the seventh day, in which Elohim, who saw his works and rested when he saw on the doorway of his creation, Messiah, the fulfillment of his work. Well, the fact was, he was still working and still is in leading his people unto himself in Messiah. Did that make sense? Yahusha rose on the Sabbath to fulfill the rest of the seventh day. He fulfilled it.
Yep.
So there's another element I hadn't brought up before. Yahusha rose on the Sabbath day. He fulfilled the rest of the seventh day, in which Elohim, who saw his works and rested when he saw on the doorway of his creation Messiah, the fulfillment of his work. Well, the fact was, he was still working and still is working in leading his people unto himself in Messiah, working for 6,000 years. Exodus 31, and you speak to the sons of Israel, saying, and you shall surely keep my signs, my Sabbaths, for this is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am Yahuah, who delivers you, sets you apart, sanctifies you. Sabbath is more than a day. Haven't we made that clear already? Sabbath is more than just a day. I mean, the Jews observe Sabbath and they don't even believe in Yahusha. Sabbath is more than a day. Outside of Israel, it became impossible for the Jews in the dispersion, in their captivity. It became impossible for the Jews in dispersion, as the law of the land they settled down in didn't have a Sabbath day holiday. And hence the Jews living in Israel looked down on these Grecians, these Greeks, called as Hellenists, because they couldn't observe the letter of the law, the letter code, in a strange land. So they were looked down upon by the Jewish Jews from Jerusalem Jews. Moreover, when the Jews went into Babylon captivity, they couldn't observe Sabbath there or any of the feasts of Yahuah in a strange land, could they?
No.
Very hard for us. How hard has it been for us to do it by the letter? 2 Chronicles 36, to fulfill the word of Yahuah by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed its Sabbaths. All the days of its desolation it keeps its Sabbath, to fulfill 70 years. If we are spiritual Jews and have crossed over from the pagan religions, I wouldn't call myself a spiritual Jew now because they were divorced, but you can see what he's saying. A spiritual Yisrael, a new bride, remarried bride, new bride. If we are supernatural and have crossed over from the pagan religions of the world, we cannot ignore the Sabbath, the Sabbaton Sabbath, because it was ordained perpetually for all generations for our sanctification, for our set apartness and deliverance. It's just the perspective from how we see it. So we're looking at this from a different perspective. If you are a stranger and a sojourner on this earth, as all our fathers were, looking to the heavenly country, New Jerusalem, weeping and groaning to be clothed from above, as we all are, you are honouring the Sabbath to keep it set apart, for the work of the Torah is being shown in your heart, on your heart, and not in a day carnal observance. On being on Facebook during Sabbath. Oh, okay. So it's not being observed by doing the carnal observance, say being on an online group, all those online groups on Facebook, doing a Sabbath, doing an online Sabbath, as they're all starting to do, listening to songs, chatting with each other, tuning into some group, preacher, preaching, etc. Today, also people turning to call on the name of Yahuah are very rigid with Moses' literal code, observance on foreign soil, whereas Abraham looked to the heavenly country in which righteousness dwells. The 10 Commandments says, honour the Sabbath and keep it set apart, doesn't it? That was phenomenal, that paragraph, because you can see what people are doing in the carnal, fleshly, base observance, can't you?
Yeah, in the world.
In the world.
Yeah.
Those in Yahuah are very rigid. Yahuah only doctrine. They won't come into Messiah, even though they might say, oh yes, I believe in Yahusha, I was immersed in Yahusha. They don't come into who Yahusha is. Therefore, you don't receive his true spirit to observe these feasts supernaturally in preparation for the great seventh day rest.
Oh, look at when they were told about Yahuah transforming to be Yahusha. They're all like, no, that didn't happen. He doesn't change. He can do anything.
He can do anything.
He can be everywhere at once. He can do anything he wants.
Yeah.
And they think that they have the right to say no.
Yeah.
He can't.
Yeah.
So it shows that they just want to continue on the letter of the law, and that's it. They don't want to be, set apart. They don't want to have the right behavior that Yahusha showed all of us that we need in order to be set apart.
Yeah. They can't hear his voice.
Nope.
Because the voice comes from his spirit. The voice within the Torah comes from his spirit. Psalm 39, David says, hear my prayer, O Yahuah, and give ear to my cry. Do not be silent at my tears. For I am a stranger with you, a sojourner, as all my fathers were. So even David knew that. Anybody who's truly experienced Yahusha in any form, supernaturally, realizes there's nothing on this earth for them. You are a stranger and a sojourner. So if you are a stranger and a sojourner on this earth, pressing to enter into the heavenly Jerusalem, you are honoring the Sabbath to keep it set apart. Sabbath in Leviticus 23 is listed among the Moedim, the feasts of Yahuah. Matthew 24, but I pray that your flight shall not be in winter or on the Sabbath. For then there shall be a great tribulation, great pressure, such as has not occurred since the beginning of the world until now, nor ever shall. Experiencing pressure? Great pressure? As in my previous videos I shared on 7 high Sabbaths called Sabbaton were to be observed in some Moedim of Yahuah. So he talked about, we know that the Sabbath day is technically a Moedim, an appointed time when Yahusha is going to do something. So we're talking about all the different high Sabbaths there, the feasts. We're not going to go into the feast right now. 7 complete high Sabbaths. Man who is in the 6th is trampling these 7 Sabbaths. Trampling these 7 Sabbaths. Revelation 11, and a reed like a measuring rod was given to me, and the messenger stood saying, rise and measure the dwelling place of Elohim, and the altar and those worshipping in it. But cast out the court which is outside the dwelling place, and do not measure it, for it has been given to the Gentiles, and they shall trample the set apart city underfoot for 42 months. Look at that. See what he's found out there? Man who is in the 6 days, fallen state, carnal man, 6 days, created on the 6th day, is trampling these 7 Sabbaths. 6, 7 to 42. Those who do not understand the Sabbath and the master of the Sabbath are trampling the outer court for 6 Sabbath cycles. Today, the whole earth is overrun by Satan's false message. Besorah, good news. It's not good news. It's a false message. People greet each other, Shabbat Shalom, don't they? Shabbat Shalom, without knowing what the true Sabbath is.
Yeah.
They do that. Even the Nazarene do that. Hey, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Yeah. Sabbath, peace, they're saying. But they don't have peace.
No.
They're not doing the true Sabbath.
No, not at all.
Yisrael's historical perspective. When the Jews went into Babylon captivity, they couldn't observe Sabbath or any feast of Yahuah in a strange land. Psalm 137, by the rivers of Babylon, where we sat down and we wept as we remembered Zion. Good song that. We hung our lyres upon the willows in the midst of it. There our captors asked us for the words of a song, and our plunderers for rejoicing says, sing unto us a song of Zion. How could we sing the song of Yahuah on foreign soil? How could we truly sing the song of Yahuah on foreign soil? We already read of the 70 years captivity of Yisrael, as prophesied by the prophet Jeremiah. stating the land enjoyed her Sabbath 70 years in desolation. Who were left behind to enjoy the rest? The extremely poor of the land. 2 Chronicles 36, in order to fulfill the word of Yahuah by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths, as long as she lay waste, she kept Sabbath, until 70 years were completed. 70 years is one full generation. There's a symbolism there. 70 years is a generation. Psalm 90, for all our days have passed away in your wrath. We spend our years like a whisper. The days of our lives are 70 years, or if due to strength, maybe 80. Yet the best of them is but toil and exertion, for it is soon cut off and we fly away. While Yisrael went into captivity in Babylon, the poor of the land rested in eating the wealth and the fields and houses they left behind for them. But Nebuchadnezzar, the chief of the guards, left some of the poor of the land as vine dressers and farmers. The great day of Yahuah, or Yahusha, because Yahuah is no more, day of Yahusha is the Sabbath. The great day of Yahusha that's coming is the Sabbath, when his elect, his chosen, will be in perpetual, everlasting, eternal rest in Messiah, while the wicked are destroyed. See where it's all going? Jeremiah 16, for thus says Yahuah of hosts, the Elohim of Yisrael, behold, I shall cause to cease from this place, before your eyes and in your time, the voice of rejoicing and the voice of gladness, the voice of the groom and the voice of the bride. I shall cause to cease from this place the voice of rejoicing. No more rejoicing. No more voice of the groom and the bride. What does it say in Revelation 18? And the sound of the harpists and musicians and flute players and trumpeters shall not be heard in you any longer. No craftsman or any craft shall be found in you any longer. The sound of the mill shall not be heard in you any longer. And the light of a lamp shall not shine in you any longer. The voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall not be heard in you any longer, just like Jeremiah. The voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall not be heard any longer. For your merchants were the great men of the earth, because all the nations were deceived by your sorcery. All the nations were deceived by your sorcery. So the true rejoicing is just not there. So compare the above 2 verses and you will see it speaks of carnal Yisrael with his blood moon calendar observing feasts and Sabbath of Yahuah in a strange land without discernment and sending greetings, Shabbat Shalom, to each other, where there is no peace. It says that too. They declare peace, but there's no peace. They have healed the brokenness of my people lightly, saying peace, shalom, peace, shalom, but there is no peace. There is no peace. They declare peace. Aren't all the believers trying to declare peace?
Yeah, all the time.
There's no peace. There's no peace. They're doing the letter of the writ law without any of this understanding of who Yahusha is, that he is seated as Elohim on the throne, and he is the true source of peace and life. And he tells us to follow him, not just to abandon Torah completely, but to see and hear the voice of the Torah. You can't, it's like secret code, as we've been discussing. You can't hear or read what the Torah truly means in your living temple without the Spirit. So follow him.
That's it. That's exactly
You
it.
think of that, darling? It's pretty tongue twisting, isn't it?
It is a bit tongue twisting, but it's clear.
I mean, he wrote this 2 years ago.
It's clear what's being said to us.
Yeah.
The Shab-bath is, or Sabbath, or however you want to say it, is not just one day.
No.
It's every day that you are living. You have to live for what Yahusha wants you to do. It's that simple.
Hear him.
Hear his voice, do what he asks, honor him in everything that you are doing.
Yeah.
That's the way that you show that you love him with all your heart and all your being.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is why I brought you in. You do the best summaries ever. Thank you, brothers and sisters. There's more coming. We're going to go through some more of these articles as we get time. And come into the true supernatural understanding of Yahusha. And it's all about 2 new commandments. Love. Love Elohim. Love Yahusha and love your neighbor as yourself. That's what he's practicing in us. Bye.
Yeah, yeah.